Want me to start the episode before you do the bit, or?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, the bit is dependent on you starting the episode.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's really funny. You're gonna love it. I promise.
Okay. Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And this week we're discussing chapter 3 of Golden Fool, Echoes.
Echoes.
You're right, it was a good bit.
Thank you.
Well, the epigraph to this chapter is, I'm assuming based on references later on in the chapter, it's official story, an official version of what happened to Queen Kettrikin.
Right. Well, it's technically labeled the brief reign of Verity Farseer, so it's supposed to be about Verity.
Yes.
But it mostly focuses on Kettrikin.
Yeah. Later on, Dutiful and Fitz, Dutiful asks Fitz about Verity, and he references how, it's kind of very vague about Verity after he leaves on his journey. I'm guessing this is one of those that Dutiful has read.
Right. Which is kind of cool to have a little bit. It's a little meta, I guess.
Right.
To be referencing it. But as you read this epigraph, it is very clear that there is a very strong bias coming from the person who wrote it. And his name is Nolus, or their name. We don't know what Nolus goes by. But Nolus tells this story about how the witted bastard killed the king, and that very night Queen Kettrikin fled the castle. And it's really interesting because there's a mention of the fool in this story, and how some people say that the fool also went with the queen, but nobody knows for sure, and it might just be rumors to cover up the fact that he was gone the same night.
Some say that King Shrewd's jester, fearing for his own life, begged her protection and accompanied her, but this may be but castle legend to account for his disappearance that night. And yeah, like you said, the dastardly witted bastard is mentioned in the first couple lines, but that's it. Like, that's the only mention of Fitz there.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to me that this is a record that can be found of the time, considering that it paints Fitz so poorly. You would think that Chade wouldn't allow those to be around, but I guess it protects the throne.
Yes, that is the story. You
can't have Regal be the murderer, that for some reason.
Well, I mean, also, it's probably something that Chade doesn't fully understand. Like, he believes Fitz and everything, but he doesn't know about the skill, right? So, and he doesn't quite, understand everything like that. But also, Chade would never purposely obscure what everyone else thinks, right? If there's a secret, he's like, that's good. Protects my boy Fitz. That's what he wanted. That's what we want. We don't want the Farseer throne to be, mixed up with this, like, what actually happened. We want an official story and kind of stick to it. So there's some sort of enemy.
I guess. I don't know. It just feels like a bad thing to allow to run wild when you do want that person that is being talked about so poorly to come back. Like, because, I mean, at the end of the day, sure, Fitz has stayed hidden, but there was no movement on Chade's part to ensure that he could come back if he wanted to. Like, there's no way to protect Fitz and get a story out. He can't think of anything better. I think that's where I'm confused, because if Chade really wanted Fitz to come back, why would this still exist? Okay,
Chade also left. Like, these scribe accounts could have been written, before they came back to Buckkeep.
Right. And that's what I was just about to say, is that I guess on the one hand, it's one of those things where, like, we don't know where this record is or how intact it is or how many people believe it. We just know it is a record, which
I don't think it's anything crazy that he wouldn't, like, I'm not astounded that he let this through, if that is possible or whatever. It is the accepted story in my mind. And this scroll in particular, this excerpt, kind of solely focuses on Kettrikin's journey to finding her husband, King Verity.
Right. And in that story, we have Kettrikin who travels to her hometown of the Mountain Kingdom, and she just finds a few of the soldiers that went with Verity, who are, it says, only a few of his men had returned, their wits scattered, and some injured as from battle, and her heart knew despair. So
And she had a copy of the map that Verity had going into the mountains and decided, well, I need to find him myself because I had a stillbirth and we need an heir to the throne, basically.
yes.
So Regal the Pretender does not get to keep it.
Yes, which, I mean, big props to this person for also saying that Regal's a pretender, I guess.
I think that's his official, title
Yes.
in the Farseer histories.
Yeah, which rough. I'm sure he would
Right.
love to know that. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting that it talks about the guards that came back from being with Verity as having their wits scattered, because we know as rereaders and even first time readers that they were skilled to come back by Verity in thinking that they just had to turn back and leave without him because he was worried that more would die. Because
And
a
it's
lot of
also a
people did
reference to
die.
Byrrc because it says only a few of his men had returned, their wits scattered, and some injured as from battle. Byrrc is the one that it was sent back after that first battle to bring news.
Byrrc went with.
Yeah, up until like the very first notion, I'm pretty sure. Then he came back and reported,
Then how did he
and
take care of Fitz?
Verity pressed on because he came back before anything happened at Buckkeep. Byrrc came back to Buckkeep and reported back to the family of what was going on with his journey.
I don't remember that at all. This isn't even like ringing a bell, and I've read this multiple. That's so crazy. I don't know. My brain works in mysterious ways, I guess.
Well, now your doubt is making me doubt my memory. I am almost 100% positive that it was Byrrc. I guess it could have been Blade, but I'm pretty sure it was Byrrc.
Well, because
And it was before they even got to the Mountain Kingdom, or maybe that nebulous area between Six Duchies and the Mountain Kingdom where they were attacked by quote unquote brigands, and everyone knows it was Regal's soldiers. And then Verity sent the person back to report what was happening, and he kept pressing on.
oh, I mean, I definitely remember him getting attacked by the brigands that were actually Regal soldiers, but I guess I didn't think it was Byrrc because Byrrc can't be affected by skill, and why would he leave if he was
wouldn't-
still alive?
Well, because he was ordered to. It's his king.
I guess. Whatever. Okay, sure.
All right, I need to look it up now. Yes, Byrrc is originally recruited, goes along, and then is injured in that battle and has to be sent back, basically, because he's
Okay.
too injured.
Okay. Weird. I forgot all about that plot line. Sure. Well, either way.
So he's mentioned in here, is
Yes.
what I meant.
Yeah.
Was getting at, because he was injured in
Right.
that journey. And that's kind of all the scraps that this scribe has that Kettrikin goes on and makes the decision on, and she leaves with Starling Birdsong and several of her servants to go on this journey to find King in Waiting Verity.
Right. Which those several servants are Beloved and Fitz and Night Eyes.
And
was
Kettle.
And Kettle, you're right. Which no, technically she doesn't leave with all of them, does she?
No, she follows like a half
Yeah.
a day behind or whatever.
And then
'cause
she
she's
joins
slow.
them, but whatever. And then also it says trolls, Pexies, and the mysterious magic of those forbidding lands were but a few of the obstacles she faced. Nevertheless, eventually she won through the land of the Elderlings. It was an arduous search, but eventually she came to the hidden castle of the Elderlings, a vast hall built all of black and silver stone. She then found her king and persuaded the Dragon King of the Elderlings to come to the aid of the Six Duchies.
She found that her king had persuaded the Elderling King. So when she arrived, Verity had already made this deal
with the Dragon King.
Right.
But I do want to point out trolls, Pexies, and other mysterious magic. That's not real.
No,
As
it
far
seems
as
to be a common refrain, though, of Pexies, and I think it's not the first time we've heard of trolls either. So I think it's a common thing of like Six Duchies. These are the folk magic wilderness tales of like, we don't
right,
know what went on there, but it was
magical.
adventurous and wonderful, and they triumphed over evil kind
And
of thing.
it is really interesting in me to me to have a story where magic exists in the world, but yet there are still magical creatures that aren't real.
Right, right.
I mean, I guess
Like
maybe,
dragons.
yeah, maybe trolls and Pexies are real. Maybe there's another white prophet on the other side of the world trying to get Pexies back. We'll never know. But I just found it really interesting how that is added into this story and how it's just a fact that she definitely went through there because I know Starling didn't say that happened. So where is this guy getting this information? What is the, like, what's the source? But they just keep talking about this. And I also found it interesting that there's a castle, but specifically a castle with black and silver stone, because that is so close to
Kelsingra.
Kelsingra
Yeah.
and sort of the skill stone and how that works.
Mhm.
And so I thought that was interesting that bits of this are wrong, but still correct.
Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder again, where do these details come from? Who's putting these details in there? How do they know enough to have something right? Is this something that Shade concocted because there are bits of truth sprinkled in there? I
Maybe.
don't know.
Could be.
Maybe I'm just overthinking it. That's also a possibility.
But it's also another example of Robin Hobb playing with real stories that we experience and what is actually told and spoken about, similar
Yes.
to, reading Piebald Prince and the Willful Princess. So, or I guess opposite, Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince.
Yes.
Excuse me. Got to put caution first.
And then, yeah, so the Dragon King of the Elderlings agrees to help. And Verity takes Starling and Ketcherkin on the back of the Dragon King with himself, drops them off to safety, and before his people can even talk to him, he is back up in the skies with the Dragon King to go defend his lands.
Yep, and go take down the Out Islander raiding ships and everything
Right.
like that.
And then nobody ever sees him again because he's too busy in the skies. But everybody knows that if they see the jeweled sparkling of a dragon, that means that Verity is there and he is leading the charge. And so I thought that was really interesting because once again, as readers, we have the privilege of knowing that Verity was the dragon.
Yeah.
And so of course nobody ever saw him because he wasn't there anymore. But it's really interesting to see how people explain that away and how that isn't necessarily looked down upon of him, that he didn't show himself because he was too busy doing.
It's also, as you mentioned, maybe Chade had a hand in directing some of this. It's a fantastical tale, and it really highlights the strengths of what and the sacrifices that Verity made. Also says in here, as the king's forces struck the red ship's strongholds and fleet, his loyal dukes rallied to his example. The few red ships that were not destroyed fled our shores to carry word of the Farseer wrath back to the Out Islands. When our shores were cleared of marauding invaders and peace restored to the Six Duchies, King Verity kept his pledge to the Elderlings. The price of their aid was that he would reside with them in their distant land, never to return to the Six Duchies. Some say that our king took a deadly injury in the last days of the Red Ship War, and that it was but his body the Elderlings bore away. It is said by those ones that the body of King Verity lies in a vault of ebony and gleaming gold in a vast cave in their mountain keep. There the Elderlings honor forever the valiant man who sacrificed all to seek aid for his people. But others say that King Verity lives still, well feasted and highly acclaimed in the Elderling kingdom, and that if ever again the Six Duchies is in need, he will return with his heroic allies to aid his people. So there's a couple things. One is about the Out Islanders and the Farseer Wrath. I highlighted some of that because that is the reason why the Red Ship Wars happened in the first place, is kind of that collective memory of King Wisdom and doing all of that. And that's also why there's, bad blood in between the two, because they're stealing, again, memories from the Out Islanders by flying over, the dragons flying over.
Right.
But then at the end, it's also mimicking the story of King Wisdom. We heard this in the first trilogy of like, he resides with the Elderlings forever because that was the deal, and he will come again to help us in need.
Yes.
And that is now attributing it to, or in addition to wisdom, it's now with King Verity. A more
Right.
recent example gives hope to the people, but also, is laying the seed of, hey, we could use this in the future.
Yeah. And like you said, because it used to be King Wistful, is that
Wisdom.
Wisdom. I don't know why Wistful. Dutiful and Wisdom, I guess. King Wisdom was the original example, and now he's sort of erased and taken over by
And it's hinted that
Verity.
he wasn't even the original. He followed the same kind of threads to go to the
Yes.
Elderlings as well.
Yeah. And I guess it makes sense that there would be the sort of legend of the price of asking the Elderlings for help is that you never come back, because that is true. That's like a
Right.
very
Yeah.
distorted version of what it is, right?
Hmm.
It is really interesting to see how that the truth sieves through not knowing to become something that's similar, but just a little off. And so, again, I'm going to go back to Chade's conversation with Fitz when Fitz says that he told a truthful account. He wrote down a truthful account that it will be there in his cabin or whatever. And Chade has that moment of sort of, well, how much better would it have been if we had an accurate account of what actually happened? So it's actually good that you wrote it down. And this is why, right? Because let's say 100 years from now, the next King royalty is looking for help against the Out Islanders who are attacking.
Regal the Second.
Yeah, King Regal II is looking for answers and finds this story of Verity. Of course, he's going to be like, I'll sacrifice everything for my kingdom and go live with the Elderlings. How bad could that be?
Right.
Well, hopefully he has enough skill.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting start to the story, especially because of how inaccurate it is and fanciful. And I think it also is interesting because it is written by a scribe who, up until this point, if you're only reading the whole story, scribes are supposed to be people that tell the truth a lot.
Minstrels.
Oh, it's just minstrels? Scribes are allowed to lie?
Well, I mean, I don't think anyone is lying here. I think because Nolus the scribe was not along on the journey, he's kind of regurgitating what the story is and writing down the accounts of from other people. And no one on that trip was going to say a real account to anyone, So whatever Starling's saying about it is considered the truth because minstrels should not lie and she's trusted by the royalty.
Right. Well, that brings me up to another story of, is Starling saying that there are Pexies and trolls? Is Starling not admitting that the fool was there? I know she cut out Fitz because he asked to be cut out, but why aren't we talking about the fool being there? Like, why wouldn't the king's jester be there? Because he was. So it just feels like an odd thing. I don't know when or if we ever get to hear Starling's tale. Maybe it happened at the end of the first trilogy. I'm just not remembering.
I don't think we got to hear it.
But I think, do get to hear at the end the real version with Fitz involved. So we don't hear what that sounds
maybe
like.
part of it, yeah. Just kind of wondering where you get the Pexies from and the trolls.
Yeah, well, and I guess my main point was just that I think up until now, scribes have been presented to us by Fitz as people who tell the truth. They're scholars, they're like truth tellers, and this proves that like just because a scribe wrote it doesn't mean that it's true. Not that we couldn't have already guessed that through everything, but
I don't know if I agree that Fitz presented scribes as truth tellers either. I think he had a great respect for Fedrin and for Patience, even though she wasn't really a scribe, and believed that they did all that they could to write down accurately what they were seeing and try to do the history of the Six Duchies, which he took on as well as a project. But in all of his talks about like writing history down and researching things about like Old Blood and learning things about the Out Islanders or the Mountain Kingdom, I feel like every time something like that is mentioned, it's like, these scrolls might not be accurate. These scrolls
That's
Or,
true.
like, it's just
Okay.
kind of like him questioning some of the veracity of the claims in them, but it's the only source of information they have to go off of.
Yeah.
I don't
Maybe I'm
know.
just conflating scribes and
Like
bards
the
or
true
whatever.
singing minstrels or
Yeah,
whatever.
minstrels. Maybe I'm just conflating them in my mind then. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But like I agree that he does have immense respect for scribes because he did want to be one as well once. Maybe still kind of does. But we start the chapter though with Fitz returning back to his small room, and he can look around and see, well, it looks like almost no one lives here, or it could be anybody. So it saddens him a little bit, but also it's for the best, he thinks. And then he can go back out into the main room where Lord Golden has left him the majority of the food. And even though it is now cold and not as appetizing, Fitz is incredibly hungry because if we remember, he did skill quite strongly against Thick and then had a skill headache and woke up. And usually, after the skill kind of subsides, you get pretty hungry that way. So he is finishing up the breakfast and tidying the room a little bit as Tom Badgerlock, doing some of the chores that Lord Golden had left for him, doing the other small and necessary chores of the room, and then closing them again before he leaves, closing the windows as he is kind of freshening up the room before he leaves.
And then he says, I had the hours until our afternoon ride to myself, hours being plural. And I just thought, what is time progression in this chapter? Because first we have last chapter was also today in this chapter. So he stayed up all night. He is walking back to the keep whenever it is just the dredges of the morning. It's still dark, not quite light yet, but it's definitely morning, not night anymore. And then he's attacked and he waits for a long time until there's more light. And
which
then
could be like 5:30 in the morning.
right. He gets to the castle, has his little Karen rant, and then goes and picks up breakfast for Beloved. So now it's a normal time for people to be awake and eating breakfast, which I would assume to be like 7 a.m., but clearly it's not, because then he brings the breakfast to Lord Golden. They have that conversation. He goes up to Jade and falls asleep for who knows how long. Has a whole thing with Thick, falls asleep for a unknown amount of time.
Enough time for Lord Golden to pass a note. Because remember, Lord Golden left basically when Fitz left.
Yes.
And Lord Golden went and had to pass a note to Jade somehow. So Jade had to be awake. So maybe 8, 9 instead of 7, generously. And then get the note and then make excuses and then hurry up to the room to wake up Fitz.
Right. So, and then Fitz gets down and does all these chores, which I'm not saying this is like an all day long chore thing,
I think
but
this
it's
is
at least an hour.
I think like max an hour, to be honest, because in the previous chapter, Fitz said that Lord Golden leaves like nothing to do, basically.
Right. But he still had to go get wood
Yeah.
and freshen all the water and then clean
Mhm.
all the spots. Like that's max an hour. Okay. So now we're at like 10 o'clock. They're supposed to ride at noon and he has hours. I guess that's 2
It
hours.
says afternoon. We don't know if it's at 3 or,
Okay.
or whatever.
Well, whatever time it is. And then for this chapter, we have like Fitz practicing the sword for an indiscriminate amount of time and then doing a really long bath and then waiting for the prince and Lord Golden to show up. So it just, to me, the timeline is really strange because this is all supposed to be in one day, but it feels like a lot.
You think Robin Hobb does time well? Fitz doesn't even know his own age.
That's true.
Although in this one, he is very adamant he is 35 in this
Yeah.
book so far.
He's been saying it a lot and he says it again this chapter. So.
Yeah. Even though there's still debate about what age he actually was at the end of the first trilogy.
Mhm.
A lot of people assume he's like 20 because then it's 15 years later and it's Fool's Errand and Golden Fool and he says he's 35. But in text, I think like he ends up being like 17 or 18, maybe.
Right.
So there's like a couple loosey-goosey years.
Yeah,
and
time
Fitz
is weird in these books.
So I don't think Robin Hobb is like, pay attention to my timeline. It's meticulously planned out.
Right. Well,
This
but
all needed to happen in a day, and it does.
Right. Which is fine. And obviously that's a nitpicky thing. Suspension of disbelief. Who
Right.
cares? But it was just
Just
something that came
busy
up when I
morning.
was reading where I'm like, wait, what? Like,
Right. It's just a very, very busy morning for Tom Badgerlock.
apparently.
But yeah, he does all those chores. And as you mentioned, he decides that, well, I can't really go down to Buckkeep Town. I shouldn't. I want to see Hap and Jenna later on. But I need to ponder those things first, the worries that Jenna has about Hap. So I'm going to go to the weapons practice court.
Which is also something he was ordered to do
Yes.
by Lord Golden.
Weapon Master Cresswell greeted me by name and asked if Delary had been sufficient challenge to my skills. Even as I groaned appreciatively, I was somewhat surprised to be so well recalled. It was both welcoming and disconcerting. I had to remind myself that perhaps the best way to ensure I was never recognized as the Fitz chivalry that had lived in Buckkeep Castle 16 years ago was to make solid my recognition as Badgerlock. So I deliberately paused to talk with the man and humbly admitted that Delary had indeed been more than a match for me. I asked him to recommend a partner for this day's challenge, and he yells across and brings out a veteran fighter who is about 45, so 10 years older than Fitz's actual age, but proves to be a more than a match for Fitz.
Right. And Fitz is just guessing at his age. He does
Yeah.
not know for sure. He just assumes.
Mhm.
But I do also want to say that I think there's something sadly humorous about the fact that Fitz is like, ooh, I don't want to be recognized as Fitz chivalry, so I really got to go all in on this Badgerlock character, which means that he just has a normal conversation with someone instead of being
Right.
gruff,
Yep.
which is not how Fitz chivalry was anyway. I don't know. I mean, maybe he kept to himself, but there's something a little bit like sad and humorous at like, yes, I'm going to be a new character, one that talks to people. So they have their little fight with Delary. I guess it's not a fight, but his
It's
little.
not Delary. It's a different man this time.
Sorry.
Yeah, Delary was the woman with two swords who
Yes.
practiced with the prince often.
Wim is the man that he practices with,
Yes.
and Wim is a good match and very kind.
And afterwards, he is very, very winded and sweaty, and he's like, I need a bath. I really. This passage is so funny to me because it seems to me like Fitz is trying to convince himself that Tom Badgerlock would be like, yeah, I will go to the baths that are usually for the stable and the guards. I will do that because it's in my character as Tom Badgerlock. He
Yeah.
wouldn't haul water. And I think it's just Fitz really wants to just go to the baths.
Yeah, Fitz
The steam
Fitz
room, I guess.
loves doing this thing where he pretends like it makes more sense as his character to do a thing,
Yeah.
especially after he's been caught unawares or feels as though he's reminded just how dangerous life is now that he's back at the castle, where he doubles down on the character that he's playing and he gets really into method acting. And all of a sudden he's like, yes, I have to justify every move by thinking, how would Badgerlock feel in this situation? As though Badgerlock isn't himself. So it's just
Right.
really, because that, I mean, realistically, that is the name he's been living by for the last 15 years. And nobody knows Tom Badgerlock anyway. This isn't somebody that's been talked about before now that people have preconceived notions about. Anything he does is what Tom Badgerlock would do. And so it's just funny that he, especially after something happens that scares him, every time he then doubles down into like this weird, like I said, method acting where he's like, yes, and what would Badgerlock do in this situation? I know Fitz Chivalry wants to do this. I think he would too. Yeah, because he's you, dog. So he gets into that method and he goes straight to the bathhouse.
Yeah. I guess they're more like saunas, the steams. And he takes his clothes off. It specifically remarks that he takes Jenna's charm off as well and hides that. And then he goes in and uses a salt scrub and pours more water on the hot stones to create more steam. And the reason why he went there is because he thought it would be, at this time of day, not very well occupied. And he's correct. He's the only one in there except for some Out Islander guards that accompanied that delegation who are sitting on the far side.
There's 3 of them
Yes.
specifically.
They kept to themselves mostly.
And again, he calls their language a hard-edged language that as though it's something he doesn't really understand. There's no hint of recognition besides the fact of knowing that it's the Out Islander language.
And Fitz also mentions that they are conversing low, so he can't really, probably is not close enough to overhear if he could understand it fluently either.
And he's more than willing to yield them their privacy, which I found really interesting because, again, he's supposed to be sort of spying on them to figure out what's going on. And instead of using this opportunity to do so, he's more wrapped up in what would Tom Badgerluck do in the bathhouse? And like, and I think that part is annoying. I don't think it's out of character. I think it's just annoying to me personally to read because I'm like, hello, get in there, start listening. Even if you don't know what they're saying, you have really good memory, so you can repeat it back to Chade, who might know. So I think that part annoys me, but that's more of just a personally, I wouldn't make that choice because I'm always caught in a bathhouse with people I need to spy on and making those choices. But
He scrubs his body with the salts and winces in pain at that, at the necessary pain. And he's almost done after he cleans himself with the sponges as well. And then a group of guards comes in. A dozen guardsmen. Veterans in the group looked weary while the younger men at arms were shouting and elbowing one another in good natured horseplay, energized by returning home from the long patrol they had just finished. 2 young men proceeded to stuff more wood into the firebox, while another slopped more water onto the stones. Steam rose in a wall, and the roar of competing conversations suddenly filled the room. 2 old men followed them into the room, moving more slowly, obviously not a part of the first group. Their scarred and gnarled bodies were testimony to their long years of service. They were deep in talk, some complaint about the beer in the guard room. They greeted me, and I grunted a reply before turning aside. I kept my head down and my face turned away from them. One of the older men had known me when I was just a lad. Blade was his name, and the old guardsman had been a true friend to me. I listened to his familiar oaths as he roundedly cursed his stiff back. I would have given much to greet him honestly and share talk with him. Instead, I smiled to myself to hear his abuse of the beer and wished him well with all my heart.
this is really interesting because Fitz doesn't often talk about people he knew at Buckkeep when he was Fitz. I feel like we get very few mentions throughout of like, oh yeah, this is who this person was and they were my friend. That's not usually something that goes together. He might recognize people and know
Right.
how they knew Fitz chivalry, but never somebody he equates as a friend outside of like Beloved and Kettricken.
And
So-
Blade.
And Blade apparently. And I thought that was, I don't know, I just didn't expect it. And I forgot how he felt about Blade's friendship, I guess. And then sadly, of course, later Blade doesn't recognize him. But it's so interesting to me to have this moment here where he's so worried because they were so close. And yet I don't remember in the first trilogy Blade being mentioned as someone Fitz thought of as a close friend. I don't know. It's stuff like that that's sprinkled in where you're like, oh yeah, there are things happening outside of the events being told to us.
Right, yeah.
And so,
He grew up there,
He
and we
grew
don't
up
see every
there.
day.
yeah. I don't know. So I like that part.
Fitz watches quietly to see how everyone's interacting within the steams because of the Islanders there as well. And he says oddly it was the young men who avoided them and gave them suspicious glances. The guards old enough to have fought in the Red Ship War seemed more at ease. Perhaps when one is a man at arms for long enough, war becomes a job, and it is easier to recognize another man as a fellow warrior than a former enemy. Whatever the reason, it seemed to me that the Out Islanders were more reluctant to socialize than the Buck Guards. So, Fitz rises to go.
Right. He mentions that it's because Blade has always had a sharp eye and he doesn't want to be recognized, so
Yeah.
he needs to leave.
Uh-huh.
And as he tries to leave, a young guardsman shouldered into me. It was not an accident or even a well-feigned one. It was but his excuse to loudly exclaim, "Watch yourself, man. Who are you anyway? What guard company?" He was a sandy-haired fellow, perhaps of Pharaoh stock, well-muscled and belligerent with youth. He looked about 16 to me. a boy aching to prove himself. And so he is accosted by the 16-year-old who wants to prove himself. And Fitz just is internally rolling his eyes and groaning because he does not want to be here doing this.
Does not want to make a scene. And he knows how to act around guards. He knows how to act in response to things. He's been to war and been on ships before. So he knows he can't be like meek to this either.
Well, see, that's interesting you say that because that's not at all how I read this situation. I read this as a further sort of trauma point of the whole. He says to be too passive would only invite attack. And
it could be read like that. Yeah, I can see it.
And I don't mean it as like everything has to be related to trauma, but we do know, especially the end of last book, there is so much emphasis on this idea of once you've been hurt, you either become an aggressor or you're forever broken, I think is roughly the gist of what was being conveyed by Fitz's opinion and by the sort of epilogues, the little excerpts at the front of the chapters, epigraphs. And then here we have somebody being aggressive towards Fitz, and immediately he's like, I have to be aggressive back. And I mean, this isn't as bad as some of the other reactions he's given us, even in this trilogy where he's going overboard, although I guess maybe that's debatable as well. But his immediate reaction is to be aggressive back, right? Like he doesn't want to be cowed. He doesn't want to be seen as weak. And I wonder if that stems from that little fear that just lives with him of not wanting a repeat of Regal's Dungeons.
It definitely could be. It definitely could be backed by that. But I do think this is a tactical decision as well. Because imagine if he would step back, someone who looks maybe close to 40, upper 30s, kind of scarred, with a 16-year-old confronting him and be like, oh, I don't mean any issues, sir. I'm just on my way out. Sorry. I'm this person. Like people would like look at that because the 16-year-old, as Fitz noted, wanted to prove himself, right? Wanted to be the tough guy in the situation.
Sure.
So I think Fitz responding here as he says, watch your own step, lad. I warned him genially. So like doesn't give in and good-naturedly says, no, you better watch yourself. I'm on my way out, basically. Just trying to like brush it aside and not be submissive to this would-be bully.
Right. I mean, yeah, absolutely. But I also feel like two things can be true. Like this could be something
that's why I was,
yeah.
kind of agreeing with you on that too. I agree. Fitz turns to go and moving past Sim, only to have the boy shove him from behind on his left shoulder. I turned to confront him, loose but not yet aggressive. He had his fists up, ready to defend himself. I shook my head tolerantly at that, and several of his companions snickered. Let it be, lad, I warned him. So the boy shoves him, expecting him to turn and swing at him.
Right.
Which is crazy to me, first of all. Why are you doing that in a sauna?
Yeah. Naked is insane because what? That already craziness. But yeah. It is very clearly this kid is being very aggressive. And I guess it's a testament to Fitz that he isn't immediately reacting with fear and aggression back.
Yeah.
Although maybe, again, that has something to do with the fact that while he has described this man as, child as being well-muscled, he still is clearly a kid.
Right.
And so I don't think Fitz actually sees any danger in the threat because he knows he could beat this kid up if he wanted to.
Yeah.
So maybe
That's
that
fair.
also helps his little like staying calm tactics. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he does warn the kid off, and the guy, he's not taking the hint. He is wanting to escalate this so bad.
I asked you a question, he snarled. So you did, I agreed benignly. If you'd cared to favor me with your name before you demanded mine, I might have answered. That used to be the custom at Buckkeep. He narrowed his eyes at me. Charl of Bright's Guard. I've no need to be ashamed of my name or company. Nor I assured him. Tom Badgerlock, man to Lord Golden, who expects me shortly. Good day. Lord Golden's serving man. I might have known. He gave a snort of disgust and turned to his fellows to confirm his superiority. You don't belong here. This place is for the guardsmen, not pages and lackeys and special servants. In quotes. Is it? I let my smile crook the corner of my mouth as I ran my gaze over him insultingly. No pages or lackeys. That surprises me. All eyes on us now. Hopeless to avoid notice, I'd have to establish myself as Tom Badgerlock. He reddened to my insult and then swung. I leaned aside to let his blow go past and then took a step forward. He was ready for my fist, but instead I kicked his feet out from under him. It was a move more befitting a brawler than a noble's guardsman, and it obviously shocked him. I kicked him again as he went down, driving the air out of him. He fell gasping to sprawl perilously near the firebox, and I stepped forward to place my foot on his bare chest, pinning him. I snarled down at him. Let it go, lad, before it gets ugly. Two of his companions stepped forward, but "Hold!" shouted Blade, and they halted. The old guardsman stepped forward, one hand pressed to the small of his back. Enough! I won't have it in here. So Blade gets it under control with his commanded respect.
Right. And yeah, so Fitz takes the kid's feet out from under him.
But again,
Literally.
we have Fitz saying, like, I have to be recognized as Tom Badgerlock. I have to kind of defend that name and step into that role.
Right. Which again, I mean, not to hammer this point home, but why wouldn't Fitz do that too? You know,
Right,
like
yeah.
it's such a weird, the way that he looks at it is so odd to me, and it's very clearly purposefully done. And so I notice it every time, but every time I'm like, okay, and why, like, again, who is this for? Obviously for Fitz, because he needs that separation in his mind. I think it's a comfort mechanism, right? Like he's doing this to reassure himself that this is this isn't a Fitz chivalry thing. This is Tom Badgerlock.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's kind of sad to think about, that he can't just move through life. It has to be under the guise of, what does this say about this character that I'm playing? Instead of just doing something and recognizing that nobody knows who he is. It doesn't really matter the decisions he makes. I mean, I guess you don't want to fall into the decisions that point you out as a ex-noble, but whatever.
And again, we have Charles here referencing special servant in regards to Lord Golden's serving man. Which, again, rumors are circulating that Fitz has no idea about.
Right.
And Lord Golden does, as we learn later.
Yes. And nobody's really coming out, right, and saying it to him, but everybody is sort of talking around it in front of him, and he's not picking it up at all.
Yeah.
That mention doesn't even get a second glance from Fitz. He never thinks on it, thinking like, what does that mean? Why would he say that to me? What's happening there? And instead just sort of breezes past it. And then again, so now Blade has taken over the situation. He's kicked out the young lad and his two friends because they're causing a ruckus and being annoying, as the youths generally are.
And commands Badgerlock to take his foot off of him so he can get up and leave.
Right. And then starts talking to Badgerlock, and Fitz in this moment decides that he has to stay because he doesn't want to get jumped by the kids that are changing out there.
Right.
But also, I think a little bit of it is that he's excited by the chance to talk to an old friend. And so he does. And he and Blade.
It does say he waits for the kids, and then to his dismay, Blade comes over. I think he, like you said, he is excited to talk to Blade, but I think he's definitely chooses to wait before Blade comes over, just, because he doesn't want to fight outside. Right. But I agree with you. He is happy to speak with Blade here.
And Blade gives us his last name, which is Havershock.
Either Havershock or Havershawk.
Yeah.
One of the two.
But just thought it'd be fun in case we ever notice that as a last name later. I don't think we do, but it's cool nonetheless.
Blade basically apologizes and says, like, even if the boy couldn't recognize it, I see that you have the scars of a man at arms. You're welcome here. That's fine. He's new to his company and still trying to overcome the fact that Rufus took him on as a favor to his mother. Tom Badgerlock, I replied, and many thanks to you. I could see he was trying to curry favor with his fellows by it, but I've no idea why he chose me. I'd no wish to fight the boy. That much was plain as it was lucky for him you did not. As for why, well, he's young and listens to too much gossip. It's no basis for judging a man. Do you hail from about here, Badgerlock?
So
That's interesting as well because, again, it references that Blade even knows what the gossip is
right.
and references that gossip is going around about who Fitz it. Well, Tom Badgerlock is, and
His
explicitly
relationship.
says that it's no basis for judging a man, revealing that Blade is a very good guy.
Yes. Which also ally? Like
For the Six Duchies, that's
I
ally.
mean, hey. He said, I don't care who you sleep with. You're welcome here, soldier man. Fist raised, like, yes, sit in here, king. It's giving very much like high school locker room, like, I don't care who you like, man, just don't look at me. Like, like that kind of trope. Which is so funny because, again, it just is going over Fitz's head. He doesn't even acknowledge it. It's not
I think he's pretty stressed by Blade talking to him as well.
right. And on top of that, I'm sure, I mean, Fitz is very concerned with being recognized as Fitz chivalry.
Right.
And so I'm sure his concern is more like, what are the rumors about me in relation to his relationship to Fitz chivalry Farseer?
Right.
And if it has nothing to do with that, he doesn't really care because that's not his concern. That's not what he's trying. He's not building the reputation against anything but not being recognized. So it's just sort of a look into maybe why he's not catching it. But there is a lot of not so subtle, hey, what are you to Lord Golden? And him just being like, ha ha ha, I'm not answering to everyone else. You know what I mean? Like, he's never denying it. So everybody's
never,
probably like,
never acknowledges it at all. So.
yeah, I don't know.
Blade and him have a little talk. Blade asks about his scratches on his neck and laughs when Fitz replies a she-cat as if he's joking. And Fitz should feel reassured because they're sitting next to each other. Blade's looking him in his face and he doesn't recognize his old friend. And he says, even an old friend like Blade did not recognize Fitz chivalry Farseer. Instead of being reassured, it unleashed a welling of gloom in me. Had I been that forgettable, that unremarkable to him? I found it hard to keep my mind on his words, and when I finally excused myself from his company, it was almost a relief to leave him before I could give in to the irrational impulse to betray myself, to drop a word or a phrase that would hint to him they had once known me before. It was a boy's impulse, a hunger to be recognized as significant, close kin to the impulse that had made young Charles attempt to spark a fight with me. So it's good that he can recognize that in himself and be like, I need to kind of get out of here.
Yeah. And really sad that he has to feel like he can't just be like, oh, good, I'm doing a good job of being Tom Badgerlock. Instead, it's
One of his only friends, like you mentioned before, from Buckkeep.
He doesn't really talk about his friends. And here is somebody he regarded as a friend who doesn't recognize him, even though he's sitting face to face. And obviously, the rational side to that is like, Fitz chivalry died 15 years ago.
More
than 15. Yeah. So more than 15 years ago, who that man thought Fitz chivalry was dead.
Fitz chivalry was maybe 16, maybe 17 when he died, and that would be the last time that Blade saw him before he went to the dungeons.
Right. And we do know that
he's the one that made Fitz put down his sword in the Great Hall when he was arrested.
Yes. And we know that Fitz was beaten very badly to the point where it has altered the way that he physically looks even now. Like, obviously the broken nose is a big thing, but he has a big scar on his face. He probably, his facial structure looks a little different. When people take beatings like that, it changes the way that your face looks. And so not only does he have the years on top of that, there's a lot going into the reasons why people wouldn't recognize him. But I would say first and foremost being that nobody expects to see an older version of a dead person.
Right.
And then be like, I thought you were dead. Even if there was recognition, it would probably be pushed aside by, well, clearly it can't be.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just an interesting thought. So poor Fitz is struggling with that sort of doom spiral of, I guess I wasn't memorable. Nobody even liked me. What was the point? Which it really does feed into that sort of mental health issue Fitz has with not being important or good enough or lovable, because here's somebody he cared about that doesn't notice who he is. But whatever. He leaves the steam chamber and goes out to realize that it is now time for the afternoon ride.
Yes.
So he has spent a little bit too much time in the bathhouse. He has to go straight to the stables instead of back to the rooms.
So he goes to the stable. He meets a stable hand leading my black Malta and an unfamiliar gray gelding, and all the mounts were groomed to gleaming and already saddled. I explained to him I was Lord Golden's man, but he regarded me with suspicion until a woman's voice greeted me with, "Ho, Badgerlock, do you ride with Lord Golden and our prince today?"
Okay, once again, I'm going to point out, I think the suspicion is not over doubt of who Fitz is, but I think it's more of like a negative association with him because of the rumors. And
Could be.
Fitz seems to be taking it as like he's suspicious of me. I personally am reading this as another person who's heard the rumors and is like, "Ooh, why would you do that? Like, what's going on?" Sort of judgment. And Fitz has no knowledge of that, so he can't read into that.
It could be, yeah. It could be.
And who knows?
But the woman who's calling out to him, asking if he's riding with the prince, is huntswoman Laurel.
And Fitz decides that this character of Tom Badgerlaw can't possibly be friends with huntswoman Laurel. She's too far above him. So he like makes a big show of putting on airs of when she asks, "How is our prince?" He says, "In good health, I am sure, Mistress Laurel. I apologized with my eyes, and she did not seem to take my careful words amiss." So, I don't know.
They're resuming. I think they're both aware of the roles that they have to have at Buckkeep now. They came to an uneasy understanding out on the trip. Laurel understood that Fitz is closer to the queen than he lets on, obviously,
Right.
or to the royal family in general. And they have to resume their servant, and she's slightly above that kind of thing, right?
I guess.
And she's quietly inquiring into the prince's health, even though there's no one around. And Fitz has to be like, "I would assume he's in good health because I definitely would never get anywhere near him.
Yeah,
Sorry for excluding you, but like..."
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a good point, the question in general. But I feel like in my mind, why couldn't they be friends? Because she's not necessarily a noble, right?
No, but where are you getting that they can't be friends? Just in his
Well,
attitude?
he's calling her Mistress Laurel. He's
Okay.
being polite but short.
Right.
It's very much, "I'm ending this conversation. I don't want to talk with you. We can't be seen talking together."
Oh, okay.
Which seems odd to me because why wouldn't he talk to her? They went on a trip. Everybody knows they went on a trip together. And again, she's not nobility. She doesn't come from nobility that we know of. She is the huntswoman, which is a big title and great, but it's not like she's just some lady of the keep.
She does come from some, she's not like noble, but she comes from some riches. Like her father had like animals and stuff like that I feel
Okay.
like, I could be wrong, but I don't think it's a noble. I think you're right there.
She definitely marries a noble later, so she becomes nobility, right? Or because
I have no idea.
Because not Shun.
I mean, she...
Lant is her son with Chade, and he's raised by his step family.
Okay.
So that's where I'm like, I'm pretty sure she does marry a noble later, but whatever the case, it's just odd to me that like, I find it odd that Fitz isn't being more openly friendly. And again, there's a lot of things going into that, right? Like he thinks that she and Lord Golden have a thing going on. She thinks he and Lord Golden have a thing going on. It's a whole big convoluted mess. But it just seems odd that they couldn't be friends.
Yeah. Once again, we get the an example of the power of Jenna's charm, where she seems to smile more warmly at him when she sees the charm that he's wearing and he covers it up. So we keep getting these throughout the series as well, and they kind of just say goodbye to each other, with her saying, "Please pass along my greetings to Lord Golden as well." "That I shall, mistress. A good day to you as well." As she walked away, I grumbled to myself over the role I must wear as a shirt to my back. I would have liked to talk more with her, but in the middle of the stable yard was not the place for private conversation. And he leads over the horses and waits
Yes.
and waits and waits until a commotion starts to happen. He's like, "Oh, I better look like I'm interested and ready to go." Here
Yes.
come,
Stand up straight.
yep, here come the prince and Lord Golden, surrounded by a ton of people.
He does notice, though, in the midst of all those people surrounding Dutiful and Lord Golden, there is not his intended is not there, and neither are any out islanders among the party. And he wonders if that's odd because he's not sure.
There
And
were several women, including one pouting with disappointment, though.
yes. And Dutiful wore a pleasant expression, but the pinch at the corners of his mouth and eyes let me know that he held it in place with an effort. And Civil Brazinga is there in the crowd, and he glares at Fitz and then makes move to get closer to the prince, but on the opposite side of the one that Lord Golden is standing on. So this is sort of concerning to Fitz
Yeah.
because, again, he's thinking that Civil might be part of the group that is trying to threaten the prince.
Was he spying?
And
Doesn't know.
instead of being, amiable and open to maybe discussing with the piebalds, though the first person he knows might be connected with the piebalds, he's glaring back at. So I thought that was kind of funny too, because for all the planning of like, kind of try to look like you're open to being approached, and he's being surly. Per usual, I suppose.
It was obvious to me that the prince wished to make a swift departure, but even so, we lingered some time longer, as he made individual farewells and promised his later time and attention to many of them. All of this he managed graciously and well. It came to me that it was the thread of skill between us that made me aware of his impatience and irritation with all the finely dressed nobility that surrounded them. As if he were a restive horse, I found myself sending thoughts of calm and patience to him. He glanced at me, but I could not be sure he was aware of my reaching toward him. And then they mount a little bit here, following the proper things for servants, as one of his noble friends grabs his horse and lets the prince mount, and then Tom Badgerlock takes care of Lord Golden's horse, Malta.
And then he is last to mount. And
Mhm.
then they're not even done with the whole procession yet, because then from the horse, he must say his goodbyes. And then they go to the guards, and the guards have to salute as they leave the grounds. And
Mhm.
then they
And
can
Dutiful is
finally-
leading this whole way as well.
Yes. And it's in very proper order, right? It's Dutiful at the very front, Lord Golden slightly behind, but next to him, and then Tom following
Yeah.
because he's the servant.
And as soon as they pass through the gate, Dutiful puts his heels to his horse. The pace he set precluded any conversation. As soon as he turned off the road onto a lesser traveled trail and then kicked his gray to a canter. And so they're following in my black, as Fitz is riding, is like annoyed that Fitz isn't letting her run ahead of everybody.
Yes, because she could definitely be faster.
Yes. But eventually, they get up to a gallop for a little bit and then they slow down. And at this point, my black is kind of settled a little bit more. And again, Fitz is like, "Oh, if I spent more than just a couple hours with the horse, it would be a really good horse. But I just
Yes.
don't have the time." So they leave all of these um, civilization behind and get to pastures. And Fitz notes this is where Verity liked to hunt. It used to be forest here, but now it's just a bunch of sheep and pastures and some farmland, things like that.
Right. Which again speaks to how much Buckkeep has changed over the years,
Yes,
right?
it's grown. They needed that land for food.
Yeah, it can no
Produce.
longer be royal hunting grounds. It
Yeah.
was turned over, which is, I wonder whose choice that was.
I don't even know if it was royal hunting grounds before,
It just
but it
was
might have
where he
been.
liked being.
Yeah, Verity was one of the few who afforded like the time to be able to hunt there.
That's fair. Well, either way, it's not there anymore, and I think it's very sort of serendipitous that that is where they end up, because then we have a whole conversation about Verity later.
Yeah.
So being on the ground that he loved to be, and that's somewhere that his son went naturally, is kind of cute.
And for now, I think we will stop it right there before they get further into this conversation. So thank you so much for joining us for this half of the chapter. It is a long one. We have a lot to talk about yet. If you want to send us your thoughts about it so far, or the book so far, or any of the previous books, please let us know. It is fitzhappy@gmail.com. Or you can message us or comment on any of our social media posts at isfitzhappy. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Reddit.
We look forward to hearing from you. All right, now we get to talk about our favorite stuff, which is what you guys brought to our attention.
But before we do, I want to give a shout out and a thanks to Neva, to Anna, and to Degenhart. Thank you so much for supporting us continuously on Ko-fi. We really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And speaking of Degenhart, we have a message or a couple comments on Blue Sky, who is brings 3 points to us. First of all, hooray that Thick has now entered the story. Very fun.
Yes.
We agree with you. Secondly, I had forgotten how much I liked Eliana. Great character, very spirited. I agree. I really like Dutiful and Eliana, and I like them together. And even though the next 2 books are like about them, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
it still feels like they're underutilized in the whole series. I don't know. We don't
That's
see
fair.
them like at all after this.
That's fair. There a little bit we do, but not
a little bit. Yeah,
super
Dutiful,
in-depth.
kind of. Eliana's there.
Yeah.
But in these books, it's great. And then thirdly, I'm on Emma's side. I too think that Peter's threat is in reference to Eliana's painful tattoo, which springs into action later in the same scene. Do you remember exactly what the threat was?
Yes. Would you like me to hit your backside too or something to that?
Yeah. Which is interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, because
I
you
just
were
don't
under
think I just don't think that he would bring up the tattoo in terms of punishment. That's like a thing that is attacking their family. I don't think he would just bring it up casually in terms of punishing her for, something like being a willful child, I just don't think that is in their relationship in my mind.
That's fair. I don't know. It just felt like a really weird. I don't know. Maybe it was a way to like call out the fact that something's happening on her back that he's aware of.
Yeah.
In my mind, I
Okay.
feel like it might have just been like a narrative choice.
Yeah. Do you want to be hurt more back there rather than
Yes.
just what's able to be done to you?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know. That was more my opinion on it as like a little Easter egg for people watching and a explanation later whenever she starts like wincing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
And maybe I'm wrong, maybe not, but I like having somebody on my side. So thank you, Degenhart.
Degenhart agrees.
We also got an email from Keith, who is writing about the epigraph for
287.
287,
right?
which is about Hoquin the White. And there's a
And-
couple of tinfoil hat theories on
Yes,
this.
a very big one here.
Yeah. First, tinfoil hat theory. I think this passage is Hobb hinting at Beloved's upcoming indulgent behavior being a preparation for his upcoming self-sacrifice. This perspective casts a new light on the upcoming, quote, lover's quarrel. Perhaps Beloved orchestrated the events for this to happen so that it would be a clean break and Beloved would be able to sacrifice himself with less intervention from Fitz.
That's definitely possible.
That is a very interesting idea.
It just gets so personal, which, I mean, Beloved can do. Beloved loves Fitz, but like Beloved's first thing is to save the world,
Right.
Bring about their vision.
You can love someone and still be frustrated by them and have real frustrations that slip out into something.
True.
It makes it, and it would make it more real if he did use his own real frustrations with Fitz.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm definitely going to be looking into it more of like is this a purposeful slip up or not,
Right.
do we think?
Yeah.
So I like that thought, that line of thought, and I will be coming back to it. Then Keith's main tinfoil hat theory is that they think Hoquin is Prilkop. When he speaks with Fitz in his cave after the white woman is defeated, he mentions his catalyst with regret. Also, his passive aggressive nature is what I think gave birth to the servant's ambition and takeover. I think he tried to, quote, repent of his abusive relationship with his catalyst. I finished the series seeing him as the biggest villain because he was the champion of letting bygones be bygones when dealing with the surviving servants and whites at the end of this series. He refused to see that the whole Clara system was a malignancy that needed to be cut out of society in order for the world to survive.
I appreciate the theory. I don't like it personally. Well, not that I don't like it. I don't think there's a lot of or any evidence for it, which doesn't mean it's not true, to be fair. I think the main points you bring up are completely valid as a reason not to like Prilkop.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see how that relates to Hokin necessarily. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing it.
I feel like Hoquin is very passive, right? Like he allows the rabbit to mistreat his catalyst and then
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be that upset by the rabbit being eaten. Like he ate his own rabbit because it was served to him by his catalyst, and he sort of just lets it go. And they clearly had a tumultuous relationship, right? So I don't know. I definitely see the or not passive aggressive, but the sort of passive role of Hoquin resembled in Prilkop. I don't know if I believe that they're the same person,
Yeah.
but I do like the idea of potentially him changing his name or having multiple aliases a la Lord Golden.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I don't know.
definitely not dismissing it out of hand, but I think Keith, that the points that you bring up are completely valid. Like I agree
Yeah.
with your points that you bring up in the paragraph. I just personally did not relate them to that story.
I don't really like Prilkop all that much. I feel like in the beginning it frustrated, or like when I first read these books, it frustrated me that he takes Beloved away from Fitz, and then I was like, that's not a good enough reason not to like anybody.
And also, it's kind of Beloved's choice to go. It's
Yes,
not like
it's not-
Prilkop.
Yeah, obviously that, but it just whatever. But then when you find out all the stuff that Beloved had to go through, all the torture, and Prokop was just kind of there and still is kind of like, well, they're just kids, they don't really know. It is really frustrating, and I get really frustrated by his passivity.
Yeah.
I can't say that word, but yes, how passive he is, because I feel as though that's not helpful in any capacity, and it also
Actively hurting.
Yeah, it encourages the horribleness to continue. So I don't know. I have a lot of problems with him that we'll get to.
Most of those problems, I think, for me appear in the last trilogy.
That's fair.
As we like hear the result of the passage, because we don't really hear much from him besides him being there. It's like, oh, cool, another white prophet that is alive and we can speak to. And obviously, Beloved has a fascination with him because that's crazy.
But also, like, why is he hiding out? Why isn't he interacting with the world? He has a reason.
He has reasons for it.
But I don't know if I agree with them. So we'll get there when we get there. I'm excited to get there. But
thank you for sharing that, Keith.
Yeah, I do like the theory.
And then Keith finally has, to end off this email, some answers for us about Dutiful and Eliana's children. You were sure that they had 2 kids.
And I was kind of right.
You were right.
He does have 2 sons.
Yeah, they do have 2 sons, but she is pregnant at the end of it and believes that it is a daughter that they're going to have. And I know some other people have chimed in, and we'll get to you as well with a little bit more detail about that. But thank you very much, Keith.
Yes. So thank you, Keith.
Yeah. But also mentioning that the reason why that Eliana wanted a daughter so badly is 1, because women are sacred in their culture, but 2, no one was able to lead their mother house because her sister, Eliana's sister, was too partially forged enough to like maintain leadership, and continue on with that.
Right.
So they need a young blood in the mother house to lead.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you, Keith. And then we got some comments on Facebook on episode 287, which is for chapter 2 of this book.
The first one, which is from Ellen, regarding names. So we call Uncle Peter Peter, and that is spelled Peottre. But Ellen and Bastian replied to this, both reading that initially as the Russian Pyotr. I think I pronounced that right.
Piotr.
Pyotr.
Piotr.
Piotr.
Yes.
My American tongue is not used to speaking other languages, so. But yeah, that makes more sense. But again, my American tongue wants just to say Peter because.
Yeah, I think, that's the Midwestern in us.
Yep.
Peter with a D.
That's Peter.
That's Peter.
That's Ellie and Peter over there.
Ellie and Peter.
They come from the islands.
The Out Islands. Yes.
And that was not a Midwest accent at all, actually.
No, that's actually a Southern accent, but it's fine. Shout out to the Southern listeners who had to listen to that accent. No, I think it's interesting to hear whenever we introduce a new character and then we say a name and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I've never read it that way. At least this one was better received than Burek.
We did like preface in the podcast. It was like episode 1 or something, like, hey, I said it this way. Emma said it this way. We compromised and chose Emma's way.
Because I'm going to keep saying it that way. Sorry.
Yep.
You can't convince me I'm wrong. No matter how many of you send me DMs about it, I'm sorry.
I mean, I've even shown her the Robin Hobb interviews.
Where Robin Hobb pronounces it differently.
Yep.
And I'm really sorry, but at
different
this point.
Different than both of us, too.
Yes.
Actually.
Yeah. So there are no real winners. And also, Robin Hobb herself commented on one of our tweets when we used to have Twitter that said that you could pronounce it however you want. Yeah. So I got permission from the big dog herself.
It does make more sense, though, Ellen and Bastian agreeing with that. But, you know, that's just, I think we're going to stick with Peter.
I do love hearing, though, all the different pronunciations of different names.
Yeah, Bastian says that it's closer to like Piotr, but I think like I looked it up a little bit and I don't think to truly pronounce it correctly, there's not the ER at the end, it's just the TR. So I tried my best.
But yeah, so we'll keep doing the Peter. From now on, they all have Southern accents, so sorry.
Ellen also mentioned that it's really funny when they're listening on Spotify, there's kind of that automatic speech to text like subtitles that get generated. And it's fun to see how they try to spell Chade. There's a lot of Chad, some Jade, and even I saw a cheetah one time, which is really funny to...
He's kind of like a cheetah.
Yeah.
Fast.
I mean, if we pronounce that one correctly as well, we would be saying shade.
Yes, shade.
But, yeah.
But yes, thank you for Ellen and Bastian.
Yeah.
And then finally, we got a comment from Bastian again, but this is about something a little bit different than pronunciation. So Bastian first wrote in to explain the Eliana and Dutiful future a little bit more.
Their child situation again.
Yes, because we didn't have it correct, which is why we love you guys for bringing that to our attention. And Bastian says that Eliana and Dutiful do have 2 children in the final trilogy. Prosper is the eldest son and the heir to the throne, and Integrity is the second son who is set up as heir to the Mountain Kingdom, which will be integrated as a new duchy when he becomes its first duke.
Yes.
And then, funnily enough, Eliana's fears this chapter of birthing pale children that look like Kettrikin are not entirely unfounded, since Integrity is stated to look a lot like King Aod. Although they don't remember if Aod's pigmentation is ever mentioned, so maybe it only looks like Aod from facial structure, but with different skin and hair color.
Yeah.
But you never know. You definitely can have light-haired baby with
True.
dark-haired children or dark-haired parents, light-haired baby.
Yeah.
So
Bastian continues on saying that Eliana had several miscarriages and keeps trying for a daughter to inherit her title as Narcheska, but in the meantime, she takes her sons to the Out Islands often to satisfy her family, which is one of the reasons Nettle is forbidden from marrying Riddle, because Nettle is the backup, basically, in case something happens on one of those journeys.
right.
Nettle does eventually get pregnant regardless. Riddle is made the Mountain Kingdom equivalent of a noble by Kettricken, and Eliana supports Nettle's pregnancy, after which the two, Nettle and Riddle, are allowed to be together as man and wife at the end of the final book. But then, at the very end, Eliana also announces that she is pregnant again and that she is certain it will be a future Narcheska. Keith kind of expanded a little bit on that, saying that there's some like omens or something
She
in the
uses
gods'
the
runes.
runes.
Yeah, that say that she's going to have a daughter, so that's why she is excited for that.
Which is really interesting. Because I know that there are people who practice pulling runes in real life.
Yeah.
There's my grandma does it sometimes, so it's kind of funny to like that's how she knew she'd have a girl. Like, oh, I didn't know you could do that with us. I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? But yeah, so that's very fun. And it digs a little bit deeper into that conflict that is coming up with that we touched on this chapter, where there are two different cultures happening that are coming together. And I remember in the final trilogy, a big thing being that people are really frustrated with Dutiful for allowing his wife to take his heirs back to the Out Islands so often.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of how dangerous it is to the lines to the throne, but also
dangerous, and also they're not really making those trips to other duchies very often.
No, yeah, they're not as in touch with the duchies. So
Yeah.
I know that is a big conflict as well for that, and that Dutiful doesn't really care because he loves his wife and will do whatever his wife wants him to do.
Yeah.
Kind of their relationship, I think. But yeah, I did forget about the whole Nettle not being allowed to wed situation and doing a third line of bastard children.
Yeah, they do get married though.
They do. They do. She finally ends the cycle by getting married to the person who she has her baby out of wedlock with. So right away, not like decades later.
Secondly, though, Bastian brings up the Henja and Illustor connection and that conversation that we had about that Fitz spied upon with Peter and Eliana and Henja in there. So Bastian says the first time through, they thought that Henja was just kind of a little crazy and spoke about the lady as referring to Eliana in kind of like the third person. Like the lady would prefer this, as in insisting that Eliana would actually prefer to wear this dress. It's the better choice. Kind of still dictating the relationship, but it's Henja in charge.
Right.
And has a weird affect to her speech, as, you know, like evidenced in pausing after Peter is like speaking to her and then responding, or smiling at the threats of him killing her, that sort of thing.
Right. And in that same first read through, they read that when Peter threatens to kill Eliana and goes to Henja, they figured he was saying, I'd rather kill Eliana than let her wear that dress. Then you'll have no more leverage and I can kill you without restriction. Which is an interesting take as well. That like maybe that was more of a threat about you can't dress that way in our culture.
Which is a really cool insight into a first read. I actually, like, that kind of sparked memory in me a little bit. I almost feel like I thought the same, of like the lady would prefer this. And I just immediately went to her referring to Eliana like that and just breezed past any awkwardness. I just don't remember. It's been so long now since I first read it, but that's a really cool insight.
I'm sure that I skipped over I don't think I remember really, but I'm gonna infer that based off knowing myself and how I read things, I feel like I probably did also skip over the lady being important. And
here you are now being like,
how could
the lady is capitalized, Fitz?
I'm sure I was curious, but I could see how it could be written off as something else. But also, I feel like I probably didn't really put much stake into her talking weird and pausing a lot, because that didn't stick out to me as much. And I think I just thought that she must be evil. Like, I definitely knew she was not a good guy, but
Right.
I was thinking more like she's somehow a manipulator and like we need to watch her specifically, not that she's just a puppet.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Bastion also gives us some insights on rereads and comes down on the same side as me, kind of thinking that there has to be some sort of communication between Henja and Illustor. Saying Illustor does not appear to be skilled by herself, but she seems capable of piggybacking on Kebble's skill and using his skill as her own, similar to what Regal does with Will and the other members of the coterie. For instance, Illustor is capable of using the skill for her seduction of Fitz, even though Robred isn't present for that. And thirdly, Beloved and Eliana have the same depiction on their backs, courtesy of Illustor. However, Beloved's are just ink. It was meant to be a permanent reminder that he's not the White Prophet, but they cannot hurt him the same way Eliana's tattoo does. And also mentions here what I did, that the tattoo is removed in the final trilogy during his torture.
The tattoo is removed when his back is
that's
skin at the
right.
end of this trilogy.
Yes,
His fingertips are removed at the end of, or are removed in next trilogy.
Yes.
Or 2 trilogies from now, I guess.
Yeah, correct. Eliana's tattoo. Actually, I think I read her name wrong, and no one's actually corrected me, but I think it's Eliania in the books.
Yeah.
There's an extra I in there that I just don't read.
Yeah, I definitely am also pronouncing it as Eliana, but
It's Eliania, I think. Technically.
Okay, we'll try to do that.
Gonna forget and stumble and
I'm
then
sure.
correct
I'm
ourselves.
sure I will forget.
Eliania's, there we go, right away. Eliania's tattoo is made with Illustor's blood as well as ink. And therefore, there's some sort of connection there that Illustor can use to make her feel pain when she wants. And reminds us that Eliania's tattoos are removed by Fitz using exhaustive skill healing after the final confrontation with Robred's Stone Dragon. Those are interesting mentions about Illustor as well, especially her use of skill, because I forgot that there was some sort of magic used in her attempted seduction of Fitz.
Yes. I forgot about that part entirely, if I'm being honest. There's a lot that happens near the end that I have forgotten, that like we keep getting glimpses of, or people keep bringing up little parts that are making me remember more. And I'm like, well, yeah, a lot more happens near the end of this.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's really good to get that refresher of what's coming and how that affects sort of the characters in the present.
And a good reminder of the distinction between the 2 tattoos as well.
Yes.
Thank you. The last thing that Bastion brings up is about Thick. And this makes me excited as well, because there's more things that I forgot that we should look into immediately rather than just kind of analyze as it comes up. And that is that at this point, Thick is probably spying for the Piebalds already.
Yes. And Thick calls Fitz stink dog, which we didn't bring up really at all, I think, other than to mention that it made Fitz fear for the being known as witted.
Correct.
That like something is in his magic is tainted, so he can be seen as witted. And I think it was just a very brief thing that we touched on.
Yep.
But this was it was a potential sign of Thick's involvement with the Piebalds.
Yeah. He gets that nickname as well as his fear of Fitz from the Piebalds, who aren't exactly in high spirits about Tom Badgerlock.
Why are the Piebalds calling him Stink Dog? Why is that a Stink Dog?
Probably saying like he stinks like a dog or something like that, you know?
Okay.
And then Thick just grabs onto those.
Stink Dog, yeah. Which is, right. Makes sense. But that is such a crazy thing to call somebody to me that it's just like, what? Okay, Stink Dog. That's what I'm going to say next time in an argument with you.
Wow. I'm just going to call you a piebald spy right back.
Okay, period. But yeah, so also Bastion was thinking that potentially Thick is making himself seem uglier
Or less
or
appealing.
less appealing as a with the skill as a specific defense mechanism,
Yeah.
which I would also like to sort of agree with, because which is why I brought up the point that Fitz acts so weirdly to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I bring up points and I never get to the end of why I started it because I forget halfway there. And then people will write in and I'll be like, that's what I meant to say. And I'm like, I get that it looks like I'm just piggybacking off of you, but I really did have this in mind when I started that conversation of why else would Fitz be so weird about it? Because I
Yeah.
feel like it's so not characteristic of him that maybe he is still being influenced, but also his walls are up very tight. And so why would he be affected at all by the skill? Although maybe that's before they're up as tight as they get. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Bastion says that either maybe Thick is doing this because he has bad self-image and maybe he's unconsciously spreading that to others with his skill, or maybe because it makes it easier to be unseen by others and not bothered. But it is also possible Fitz is more disgusted by Thick than by other people because Thick is not well cared for. Thick hasn't washed since he came to the keep, if you catch my drift.
True. There is also that aspect.
Yes, yeah. I believe since his mother dies, right?
Yeah,
Thick's
because
mother?
she was taking care of him.
Yeah.
So it is also very sad for Thick.
Mhm. And lastly, Bastion says here, I wanted to give you my opinion of what Galen looks like, since that was mentioned in the post credits of this episode. I've thought this for a long time, but don't think I've ever written it out. But to me, Galen looks exactly like Percy from the TV show Blackadder, as portrayed by Tim McInerney. And I looked this up, and I also agree with that. And it's not that far off from Gargamel, except the clothing. Like Percy
I mean,
from
there's more
Blackadder.
of a bouffant going on with the
Yeah.
hairstyle, but
Percy from Blackadder is Lord Percy, I think.
yes. Yeah.
And it's more of like a noble dress with like the ruffle collar and everything. And Galen is noted to be an aesthetic where he doesn't have anything, like more monkish.
Yes.
But looks wise, I can kind of agree with that. I can kind of see that. Kind of like greasy looking, black hair.
Okay, here's the thing is that unfortunately, I'm going to have to say that he's got to be hotter than both of those examples that we have said previously. Because Regal's super hot.
Lady
and
Desire was supposed to be pretty
she's
attractive.
supposed to be really hot, and like it can't just be the Farseer line doing the heavy lifting. You know what I mean?
Was it a tailor that Lady Desire had Galen with? It
Yeah.
was like some sort of skilled servant. Maybe he was ugly. You know?
Okay, fair enough. I just feel like, I mean, I love the depictions so far, and I think they're very funny, and I do agree with them. But on a real note, I do have to say he's probably really hot, unfortunately, and like it feels like Robin Hobb just wrote a bunch of hot people in this book, because everything we get about almost all the main characters is how attractive they all are. Beloved only ever gets called attractive by Fitz.
Right.
In every iteration.
Except for Lord Golden has a lot of hangers on
That's true.
of people wanting to make his acquaintance.
But that doesn't mean that he's attractive. It just means that he's super rich.
True.
And
that is
he's
true.
supposedly a noble from Jamalia. So,
Yes.
Jamalia. So, you know, I don't know. There's excuses for that, but nobody has out loud, I believe, said in a sincere way that we can tell that Beloved's beautiful. I think Kenneth thought that Beloved was
Amber
is
extremely beautiful as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So we've had one other person.
Yeah.
But like other than that,
not the greatest track record.
No, and we're not getting into it again. But like most people that are main characters.
And it was also not very attractive to anybody else besides Kenneth.
Yeah.
So there's two.
But Kenneth's very attractive. And so are in
like a very charismatic, roguish way.
You don't think he's actually attractive?
I think he is, but not like conventionally, you know?
Weird. Okay, I definitely feel like he is conventionally attractive, which helps with his persuasion and charisma.
And I don't think Brashen is super conventionally attractive. I think he is attractive, but I don't think he's like And I'm thinking like conventionally attractive as like a scale between Henry Cavill and like prime Brad Pitt. You know,
That's so interesting, but okay.
that's like can maybe with some George Clooney. I know these are like bad examples for you personally.
Yeah, personally, don't find any of those people attractive, but
Yeah.
to each their own. If you look like them, I'm so sorry. You are perfect the way you are. I don't know. I guess I don't know. I feel like Brashen has to be okay. Again, this is bad because this goes to a whole class conversation that we don't need to get into, but like he's noble, so therefore I'm assuming that he has to look good. Which, like,
But also, he
there are
got
nobles
kicked out when he was 14. He spent a year on a pirate ship.
but you can look scruffy and still be attractive.
Sure.
Like he
sure.
seems to me like a person who, like, if he just took a shower, he'd look cute. That's how I see Brashen. As like he's hot underneath.
Yeah. Okay.
There are things that have happened to him that make him not as hot readily available to the eye. But if he cleaned up his act, I don't know.
Like Kettrican has to look pretty attractive. Molly has to a certain extent.
Yeah. Burek has to be kind of hot.
Oh yeah, Burek definitely.
Because he got all the ladies.
Yep.
Chade, people find him attractive for some reason.
He's a Farseer.
Gotta be again the Farseer bloodline. It reigns.
Yep. That's why they want to keep that bloodline pure. Actually, they're just like, we need to stay hot for the kingdom. Actually.
we're cracking into the lore here, you guys.
Yes.
We found the real reason the Farseers reign. They're the hottest people imaginable.
Chade was scouting around. He's like, it's a good excuse to combine these kingdoms, but Mountain Kingdom, they got some hotties.
They got hotties. We got
Islanders. They got some hotties.
We gotta pump up the bloodline.
Oh, I think we solved it. Actually, I think that's what Robin Hobb was writing about,
and clearly what Bastion wrote into us to talk about. So,
that's definitely the same thread.
and that's a tangent.
So thank you for the conversation about thick.
Yes. Oh, thank you. And thank you everybody who writes in. It's always good to see what your tangents lead to tangents of our own. Who knows? But thank you. We always enjoy hearing from you, and we can't wait to hear more from you next week.